Hey everyone, and welcome back to the series called Anxiety Reduction via Self-Regulation. I'm your teacher, Sarah McKelvey. In today's lesson, we're going to learn all about co-regulation, what it is, and how it helps us in our efforts toward achieving self-regulation. I am really pumped, by the way, about self-regulation. I just read a part of a manual this morning, and I really think this discipline is still emerging, and we're sort of consolidating our thoughts on self-regulation. This morning I was reading about how self-regulation is related to and helps us attain our goals. And so I think that is a really great area of research opening up in the Department of Self-Regulation. But today, let us not get too distracted because we have a central topic, and that is co-regulation. Maybe some of you, if you participate in New Age circles or read some of its self-help literature, maybe you've heard the phrase good vibes only. Maybe you have some qualms about that. Maybe you've been warned to distance yourself from emotional vampires or even from the discipline of psychology at large. You may probably have heard about the importance of boundaries in relationships. All of these topics are relevant to people because the energy that others transmit, which includes their emotional states, motivations, and intentions, affect us and we them. This speaks to the essence of co-regulation, which is the way others can regulate or dysregulate us and we them. That is, the essence of co-regulation rests on the fact that our nervous systems are open. As I think I've mentioned before, we mutually influence one another. We can't help but mutually influence each other because we're a part of a collective energy field. We are not existing within a vacuum. This is implicated in something called brain entrainment, which occurs broadly across mammal species. So it's not just us. Our nervous systems are designed, so to speak, as open, collecting information, transmitting information all the time in the form of energy and emotions. Co-regulation happens when one nervous system positively impacts and influences another. At the dyadic level, between two people, it can also work at the level of groups, whether large or small. So per my earlier examples, maybe you've been informed about some helpful practices that help you protect yourself from harmful energy that dysregulates us. Learning to combat the damaging aspects of ourselves and being open to others' energies is only a part of self-regulation, right? It's just an example in many examples that live in this interpersonal process. There are threats and opportunities in this interesting fact of interpersonal life. When we leverage the positive or nourishing aspects of co-regulation, we can restore a sense of safety, calm, even excitement and enthusiasm for life when we're interacting with a nervous system that is regulated. We should remember that co-regulation is not just an interpersonal process. It's, as a LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker out of Raleigh, North Carolina, says, grounded in neurological and biological processes. So it's really powerful. It exceeds our ability to even control it because it's a biological fact that when you're with someone who's really down, right, really in a slump, very depressive, it's hard not to be affected by, for example, that energy. The original research that came out about co-regulation really focused on infant caregiver bonds because that is where the neural circuitry for the capacity to self-regulate is initiated. So we are not equal in the lottery of life. Some of us have, through adequate caregiving, the neural circuitry that helps us sustain self-regulation when we get older. Also, our temperaments are differentially, make us differentially liable to dysregulation or resilient to dysregulation. Some of the best resources that we can get through being co-regulated are things like encouragement when we're feeling down, soothing or comforting when we're afraid, a nurturing in self-led interest, so what we really desire, what we want. If we're with a caring, supportive other, they will really facilitate that for us. When you're in a state of dysregulation or chaos, being contained with a calm brain helps you enter that calm state so that you can exit your chaos and maybe contain it yourself. So to ground back into the specific purpose of this series, right? If you're watching this because you're dysregulated easily or want to rein in your dysregulation, utilizing the positive aspects and effects of co-regulation to your advantage will be a great addition to your resource toolbox. And you should use it. It is one of the best ways to regulate yourself. So basically, you're recruiting the willing service, we might say, or support of a regulated and attuned nervous system. You're borrowing a nervous system that's regulated to connect with you as you're experiencing a state of dysregulation. Your mirror neurons will pick up on that regulation and regulate you all by themselves, all the while you're probably, if you're with a supportive person, actively working on coping strategies, taking perspective, problem solving, getting some validation. So conversing with, spending time with, processing with a supportive other person or a supportive community within a supportive community helps you restore yourself. And this is a collective form of nourishment and creating a peaceful society. And we all need this from time to time. Dysregulation, even though it can become problematic and out of control for some people and really impact the quality of their lives, dysregulation is a normal part of the human experience. We can't get out of it altogether, nor should we want to. Sometimes it is appropriate to become stressed, fearful. We are wired to become, under certain conditions, paranoid, cynical, depressed, jaded, hardened, worried, when under threats of various sources. What's great is that if we are, as one in a tribe, so to speak, if we're all supporting each other, the statistical lottery would say that when your friend is dysregulated, you might not be, right? And so you can kind of swap roles, playing, the part of the container and then the part of the person in need of help. And I think we need to do this more regularly together. The only counterindication to what I'm talking about is that sometimes in relationship there can be quite an imbalance where one person is always the one in the state of distress wanting resolve, and the other is playing the role of, really it's the role of parent. I'm saying container, I'm saying the helper. There's many ways to frame this. But that can become codependent in some circumstances. Of course, it's not that we should strive for some rigid 50-50 in all of our relationships, because that's not appropriate for all relationships. When somebody is in a significant crisis or a life overhaul, they're going to need more support than usual. And it's not really adaptive to ask for the same amount of support back in that example. Also, in relationships structured by developmental disparities, like if you are parenting, for example, you should be in the role of support, parent, and helper most of the time. Or even in a mentor-mentee situation, the mentor shouldn't expect a 50-50 give and take in the relationship. So we want to think about it that way, but we also want to guard against relationships that within this co-regulation can enable codependency, which has a flavor of dysfunction where someone might be relying too much on one party or too much on co-regulation at the expense of these other wonderful resources that we have on this series that help us with self-regulation in a diverse set of ways with a diverse toolbox. That same licensed clinical social worker out of Raleigh, North Carolina, I don't know personally, I just really liked her article, which I'll link in the description box below, said it this way: I really appreciated her thoughts on co-regulation and codependency, though I don't think she explicitly names that she's guarding against codependency. I kind of glean that from this. She said, "You aren't generating my feelings, nor are you responsible for them. I am responsible for understanding, sharing, and tending my own emotions, but we are affecting one another in important, real, and unconscious ways." So I just really like the balance in that statement between compassion and accountability, between personal responsibility and self-acceptance, accepting that we have different emotions. She also says that understanding co-regulation is important because we can become aware of the interplay between our nervous systems, and we can alter the dynamic that we have with others to foster healthier, happier, and more fulfilling relationships. Strong partnerships can be healing to our attachment wounds and complex trauma. Conversely, they can re-traumatize us or damage us further if in the openness of our nervous systems we are co-dysregulating each other. Another helpful tip from this gal from Raleigh, she says, focus on yourself rather than on changing others. This is the key to changing the relational dynamics. Changing others, she says, is never a valid goal because it's absolutely ineffective. Making changes to your own ways of behaving, experiencing, and relating to others, she says, is hard enough work. I might add, is what you should focus your efforts on because that's what you can control. And you have far more ability to influence that and really do the work, the inner work in that, than on nagging or harping on others to relate to you in ways you would prefer. So from all that's been said, if you really want to lean into co-regulation as a method of achieving more regulation, you could think about scheduling a therapy appointment with your counselor or psychotherapist or analyst. You could talk with a supportive friend, or you could join a reliably supportive and nourishing communities, a community that you can reasonably expect is nourishing most of the time to you and maybe shares your set of values, is really in alignment with you. Being in kind, warm, empathic, compassionate spaces, whether with one person or in an auditorium filled with inspiring energy, is very helpful for us. It's restorative. It probably even repairs at the cellular level. I don't know for sure, but I really intuit that. And especially in this crazy, chaotic world of rampant dysregulation, where we see in the news acts of extreme impulsivity, born of anger from dysregulated states, or if you could just feel the impatience on our roads, right? We need to invest collectively in regulation and continue to seek and foster these co-regulating experiences. Again, I'm Sarah McKelvey. I'm so glad you tuned in. Our next video is a bonus video, and it's going to cover coping skills when you're in a crisis versus the everyday coping that we've been largely covering here in the series. Stay tuned and see you there. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to consider purchasing the downloadable e-workbook that was developed in tandem with this series. It is a 20-page e-workbook that's fillable, that is a beautiful and functional accompaniment to the series, where you can take a lot of notes, customize the suggestions, and kind of go through a mini module which allows you to deepen your understanding and application of the strategies here to help you in your efforts to achieving self-regulation.